English, right? Because I don't speak any Polish. Except what David told me, which is not appropriate. Okay, so we're gonna start with the presentation about the SEB movement. I want to ask, does anybody here know about the SEB movement? Can you raise your hand? All right, amazing. Okay, and who here has been to a vigil before with the SEB movement? All right. I'm guessing you went, but there were no trucks?
I was, but
okay.
without animals.
Alright, okay. But you went, that's important. Okay, so we're gonna start with a short video that shows what we do with the SEB movement, and then we're gonna start the presentation. Yes.
To me, bearing witness means to not look away and really trying to grasp what is happening. I think most of the people nowadays actually do kind of know that in order for them to eat meat and eat eggs and drink milk, that someone has to die and someone has to suffer. I think they don't really grasp it, And even for me as a long-term vegan, I've seen so many videos and so many pictures, but still it's a completely different thing when you're actually driving up to a slaughterhouse and for the first time you smell what death smells like. You can just hear the screams. I think that was the hardest thing for me, hearing the screams. It made me realize that all of the videos that I've seen online, that is exactly what is happening behind those walls at this moment. And this was really hard to take for me. When we stopped the first truck, and I was able to walk up to the pigs and look into their eyes, and they just stared back at me, full of fear and full of not knowing what is going on. And I tried to put myself into their shoes, I tried to see from their perspective, but I mean that's almost impossible, And you just realize on such a deep level how unjust this is, how wrong and how cruel that those innocent beings have just been deemed death row inmates, and there is no way they can get out of this situation. You know that when this truck leaves, when this truck goes inside the slaughterhouse, they will go through the most cruel thing that you could ever imagine, and there's nothing you can do about it. You know that when you go home today and you take a shower and you have lunch or whatever, at this point in time they went through the whole process already. They've literally been murdered, and they might be in a slaughterhouse, their corpses waiting for someone to eat them. I mean, there's no words for that. And I think this experience, it just really made me realize that being vegan is not enough, because yeah, for sure, I'm not participating in it, and it feels good to not participate in it. But I didn't realize how or to what degree I was actually still blocking out that fate. I was trying to ignore it, to ignore what's actually happening. But when you're there and when you're trying to connect to those pigs, and when you smell it and you hear it and you look into the eyes, I guess on the positive side, it really motivates me to speak up and to try and stop this as soon as possible.
So that's a short video of just to show you what the presentation is going to be about. So the SEB movement actually started in Toronto, and that's why in the beginning it was called Toronto Pig Save. And because more activists started doing it, they changed the name to the SEB movement just because we can't use Toronto everywhere, obviously. And what we do is basically two main things: is bearing witness to the animals, which is what you saw all these activists doing. And the second thing is building a community. Now we're gonna go through details about each in the next slides. So I'm gonna give you a short explanation of how it all started. That's Anita Kranz there. She lives in Toronto. She was one day walking with her dog, Mr. Bean, and she's the co-founder of the SEB movement, because while she was walking with Mr. Bean, she saw a truck of pigs going into a slaughterhouse. And she was walking actually next to a park, and you see this beautiful view, you don't think about it, but actually there's a pig truck over there because there's a slaughterhouse, and all these slaughterhouses are always well hidden so that the public eye cannot see, so that people don't think about it. So when she saw the truck going in, she had a couple of minutes with the animals, and she got overwhelmed, and she basically bore witness to these animals going in. And from that day on, she made a promise that at least 3 times a week she's gonna be there for the animals, and she's gonna try to stop the trucks. And that's when more and more people started joining her. And with time it became like a weekly thing, and like a community started building in Toronto, and more activists were doing activism. This day was actually a horrible day, but it also shifted the whole activism scene. A truck full of pigs had an accident, and it turned over, and a lot of the pigs were on the street. Obviously, the first thing the police did when they arrived is they closed the scene, because they didn't want the public to see what's happening, because when you see that, obviously you start making the connection of what you're eating and the victims. And a lot of activists went there from all around Toronto, begging the police and slaughterhouse workers to at least save the injured pigs. Because I don't know if you know, but most animals, if they arrive to the slaughterhouse injured, they cannot kill them for human consumption. So they stood there for hours fighting, but they didn't manage to achieve anything. Every single pig that was injured and could not be killed for food was killed and thrown in garbage. So that day really made the whole activism scene in Toronto change, and people were more aware about the importance of bearing witness. These are just pictures of that day and how the hundreds of activists that came. To this day, we have sometimes, it happened in the UK recently as well, when a truck turns over, activists just rush to the scene and see if they can do anything. And in some cases, especially when they're birds like chicken or turkeys, they're less injured, but it's also easier to carry them away and save them. Alright, so here are some pictures of Toronto Pig Safe. And the reason why it also became very famous is because, at least specifically with pigs, bearing witness is quite different than with other animals. I don't know if you know, but most pigs, actually pigs in general, they're much smarter than other animals. Scientists say between 3 and 5-year-old kids have the same intelligence as pigs. And the reason why it's more powerful to bear witness when there's pigs is because you very much feel that they're really understanding what's going on. They're really understanding who's on their side, who's on the other side, and they really react to us and to what's happening in very different ways. Sometimes when a truck stops for a long time and they realize that we're on their side and we're just there to show them love, when the truck starts rolling away, they start screaming because they know very well what's about to come, because obviously they can smell death and everything. Yeah, so until now, Toronto Pig Safe has had over more than 1,000 vigils actually. And when it started there, I think the first time that other activists came, they were from New York, and they bore witness in Toronto. And when they went back, they said, all right, we want to start doing the same thing back home in New York. So they started doing vigils there, and then from Chicago as well, people went to Toronto and went back to Chicago and started holding vigils as well. And that's how they had the idea of just, let's say, copy-pasting the same activism type to cities around the world and building a worldwide network. The same way we have Anonymous Photo Voices now, is the same thing that happens at Cuba Truth events. Every single city that starts a chapter, they just do the same thing. So this is what we do. We bear witness during the week or during the weekends, depending on the country. Some countries receive the animals, let's say, starting Sunday, like in Spain, and they start at night. In other countries, like in the UK, they start early in the morning and they don't do weekends, so they arrive at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. But most of the activism is bearing witness, but what we also do is just outreach on the street. So sometimes we have photos taken during vigils we did, let's say in Barcelona. We take those same photos and we go on the street and we form a line, and we have papers that say all these animals that you see in these photos were actually killed in Barcelona, and we were there and we saw them. And that really makes people react in a different way, because if they live in that city where that picture was taken, they very probably were one of the people who ate those animals. So they can connect in a stronger way and really feel the responsibility more than just watching pictures of animals or videos of animals on the internet. While we're doing that, when it comes to at least bearing witness, we try to go live on our social media platforms. We share pictures, we share videos, because as I said, the impact that it has is much stronger. I myself was doing activism for 3 years, and when I decided to do my first vigil, I was in the UK, and a friend messaged me from Lebanon after 7 years of not talking to him. And he said, I always see what you post and it never affected me, but today in the morning when you went live at that slaughterhouse, it really got to me, and I want to go vegan. Please let me know how I can do this transition. So this is when you realize, even if you watch the most horrible slaughterhouse video on YouTube, it's just the disconnect is very big, because it's already in the past. It's probably in another city or another country, and someone who uploaded, you have no idea who they are. But when you actually go live with your own phone on your own Facebook, and your friends and families are watching the videos, they think like, this is them right now outside that slaughterhouse, and this animal is probably getting killed because I put a demand for it. And they, as I said, feel that immense responsibility, and that's why it gets to people in ways that other type of activism can't. So we're lucky sometimes, at least with birds. Most birds, when they get to slaughter, they don't have numbers, like other land animals do, like pigs and cows. Sheep, they usually put a number in the ear tag. But for example, when it comes to birds, because they come just per crate, if anything happens, they don't really care about how many of them are not in the slaughterhouse at the end. So if you have good relations with slaughterhouse workers, sometimes all around the world, they just give you a couple of chicken, or they give you a turkey, because if you already have that good connection with them, you're not attacking the workers, you're not telling them that they're bad people or they're the enemy, then they kind of understand why you are there, and they kind of have compassion towards you and respect the fact that you're being respectful. And if you build that bond with them, and you get to the point where you're comfortable enough to say, can you please give us a couple of chickens, let us take them back home with us, they'll go to a sanctuary. These people know very well what's happening, and we have to keep in mind they're not all doing this job because they love killing animals. Most of them have no other option, and because they can understand what the animals go through, they're also open to helping us help the animals. So rescues happen all around the world during vigils, and most of the time, because it's a slaughterhouse handing us the animals, you don't even have to worry whether or not you're doing something illegal, because you can't go to jail or get in trouble with the police if they're the ones letting you do it. So another thing we do is we go to events taking place in cities, and we have like tables and stuff, so flyers and things like that. And people who are interested in opening their own group for doing vigils, they give us their information and we contact them. In my example, I met some at a Veg Fest, activists from the UK. They had a table and they explained everything. And a couple of months later, we started in Barcelona, a group called Barcelona Animal State. So it really helps to grow the movement in that way. And what we ask is, when someone starts a group, if we can always have a vigil regularly. It doesn't have to be every week, it doesn't have to be every 2 weeks, but even if it's once a month, then you keep that regularity, because the fact that people know that once a month there is that vigil makes them be more aware of it, and it goes into their plan of activities easily, because they don't have to adapt to anything else. This vigil is always going to happen, so they know, all right, third weekend of this month I know there is a vigil. So that regularity and commitment really brings about community, and it creates this, let's say, family. You know, I don't know. Does everybody here know Nas for the Voiceless? Yeah. So how many of you have taken part in Cube of Truth events? Can you raise your hand? All right. So you know, whenever like you go to a Cube of Truth, most of the people you meet there, you've just met them because of activism, but somehow you have a connection with them because you always meet up and do the same thing, and it's exactly the same thing with the SEB movement. Another thing we do is called Climate Vegan. It's a part of the campaign of the SEB movement, and it's about raising awareness about veganism using the environmental approach. So that means, let's say we go to the universities or just social centers and we screen documentaries like Cowspiracy. So we have the license to do that. So using, let's say, the environmental club of a university. You contact them, you say, hey, we have a nice documentary, are you interested in screening it? And you go there and you screen it, and environmentalists come, which most of them unfortunately aren't vegan, and then they see that, and you're all of a sudden like opening way for a whole other community or group of people to join you. So this is just a graph of how the SEB movement has grown now. In 2010 it started in Toronto, and we can see that starting 2015 the numbers started doubling. So 2015 was 50 groups around the world, 2016 100, 2017 240. Right now we're in 50 countries around the world, around 450 groups. So we already see that it's exponentially growing, and we're always thinking if there's 728, I think, Anonymous for the Voices groups around the world, that means there's 728 groups in 728 cities who like doing activism for the animals. So we reach out to these people, and I myself am an organizer of the Anonymous for the Voices in Barcelona, so I'm in contact with a lot of organizers around the world, and we ask each other like, hey, do you think you can also do visuals, just to make sure that we always use all types of activism and support each other as different communities. So an important thing about the SEB movement that I want to talk about is the love-based approach and the non-violent approach that we use. Leo Tolstoy has a quote, and I'm going to read it. It's, when the suffering of another creature causes you to feel pain, do not submit to the initial desire to flee from the suffering one, but on the contrary, come closer, as close as you can to her who suffers, and try to help. This is very important. A lot of people, including myself, I used to think, what's the point of being there? You're just gonna go there, see animals going to slaughterhouse, get depressed, go back home, hate humans more, right? I always thought, why would they do it? Sometimes I saw that they rescued animals in the progress, which was nice, but the more videos I watched, the more confused I got, until I joined one, and my reaction completely changed, because I realized we go to hospitals, to people we know, sometimes friends, sometimes family members, that we know are gonna pass away. And we know that makes us sad, but what we want to do is be with them in the last moments that they're alive. And what you do is, when you're bearing witness, you're not only raising awareness on social media, but you're also showing the victim sometimes the only compassion they're ever going to receive before they get killed. So it's all about being there for the animals and showing them that there's people who care. And us being there is really disrupting the normalization of the idea of killing animals, because a lot of people drive by slaughterhouses and they have no idea what's going on there, but then they see a group of people outside. Alright, the first time they see, they probably think, oh, a bunch of hippies doing something. And the second time they see, oh, these hippies are here again. Third time, fourth time, fifth time, people start stopping. In Scotland, there was a farmer who used to bring her own animals, and at one point, when the activist stopped her, she started crying. She went down from the truck and she told them, I want to stop doing this, I love my animals, please help me. And the activist came and hugged her and started explaining how veganism works and how she can do the transition and how she can change her farm to a sanctuary. So it really cuts that normalization. It makes people think more and question their habits more. And the reason why we use the love-based approach is because we have to keep in mind, as I said earlier, people who work in slaughterhouses most of the time are either, let's say, people who don't have a permit to be in that country, just immigrants, or just anyone, even a citizen of that country, who doesn't really have any other option, and their last option is always working in a slaughterhouse. And sometimes that's the only thing they can do to put food on the table of their family. In Barcelona once, I entered the slaughterhouse and I was talking to one of the workers, and he said something that completely changed my perspective. He said, don't you ever think that a kid grows up wishing to be a slaughterhouse worker? And that's the moment I realized, if there's anyone who understands what animals go through and that this is wrong, it's the slaughterhouse workers themselves. So the last thing we should do is put the blame on them, where the only reason is they are there is the same reason that we were eating meat. Most of us were not born vegans. We just had this conditioning by society, and we were doing it all the time. In the same way society conditioned us to do that, it conditioned them to be in this position. So we always keep a peaceful approach, we always keep a compassionate approach, not only for the philosophy of non-violence, but also because it's more effective. At the end of the day, when the trucks start arriving, if the slaughterhouse doesn't want us to be there because we're violent or disrespectful, they could just tell the truckers just drive in, don't wait for them, don't even stop for a second. And that happens in some cities where they don't have a good relation. But for example, in Finland, they just had their first ever vigil. When we got there and we started talking to the slaughterhouse manager, in the beginning they were very shocked. All of a sudden, like 30 people show up with signs and stuff. They start getting like worried and upset of what's happening. And when they came and we explained why we are there and what our approach is and what our code of conduct is, he told us that we can stay on their private property, even though he doesn't have to do that. He told us which trucks are coming and what time are coming. Sometimes slaughterhouses never share that information. He called the truck drivers one by one and he told them that they are activists outside, but don't worry about it, you can stop for them, they're peaceful, they're not going to cause any trouble. And that helped us get footage and pictures of these animals. So not only non-violence is a good philosophy, but it's also the most effective one in this case. And at least for the animals, no matter how we feel, at the end of the day, it's about what's effective for them, and we have to respect that. So a part of building a community is doing all-day vigils, which basically consists of instead of being there for 3 hours, just being there for 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, or doing 2 days vigils, 3 days vigils, 5-day vigils. In Germany, they just had a 5-day vigil in one of the biggest slaughterhouses in Europe. And what that does is it really brings people together. Actually, the first vigil that I ever did was an all-day vigil. It was 8 hours long. They had food, they had drinks for everyone to be warm because it was cold in winter, and just the feeling of being there. The trucks arrive, obviously it's an emotional roller coaster because you don't know how to feel, and then until the next truck arrives, you're spending time with other activists that are compassionate towards you, towards the animals, and just that feeling of being together means a lot to a lot of people who don't really get support from their family or their friends, so it's really good to do this. Another thing that you can do is reach out to celebrities or famous activists in your community or country and just ask them to join you. I don't know, for example, if you know, does anybody know Bite Size Vegan?
Yes.
She's amazing, right? Most of the things I know from veganism, I've learned from her. She has a YouTube channel. She gives a lot of educational videos actually about veganism when it's nutrition related or ethics related or environmental reasons. So when people like this come and they have a big, let's say, social media platforms, the message goes out in a better way. In Los Angeles, for example, they have Moby, the musician who comes. I think Miley Cyrus has been there as well. And these are people who have millions of people watching them. So it's really, we could all probably share 500 times the same video. If one celebrity shares once, even if it's for 24 hours on their Instagram, the reach that it has is absolutely crazy. For example, right now, does anybody know Lewis Hamilton? The Formula One, he's the Formula One champion right now in the world. And a couple of months ago, he posted on his story that he watched What the Health and that he's going plant-based. A week later, the rally champion in Lebanon, I keep on saying Lebanon, sorry, but I'm from Lebanon, that's why. So the rally champion of Lebanon shared on his Instagram that he watched What the Health and he's going vegan. So obviously that person was following Lewis Hamilton, unless it was a really crazy coincidence, which I doubt. And so now we're trying to reach out to Lewis Hamilton because he's changed his biography on Instagram to animal lover and then with a plant symbol as well. So we really see him also being on the ethics side. And he has, I think, 6 million followers. And if you just get him to come to one vigil, and let's say 2 million people watch his stories every day, the impact that will have is so powerful. And that's why we need people like this who have a big platform to spread the message. All right, so these are other, well, I don't know if you know him, he's a very famous vegan athlete, calls himself sometimes the badass vegan. He's also been there, and yeah, people from different communities. So if Lewis Hamilton is from the Formula One scene, you have athletes as well, whether it's running or boxing or singers like Moby. And then just World Slave Day, for example, it happens all around the world. We hold vigils in every city, well, wherever we can, because it creates a bigger impact also when it comes to the media. All right, so I'm going to talk a bit about why we bear witness. It's very important to understand why we're doing this, because if you just go there and you're not thinking or you're still confused, then it's just going to be weird for you. So first and most importantly, you're not ignoring what's happening to the animals. I want to say that you should also not force yourself to bear witness, because if you had to force yourself, it means you're emotionally not ready, and we don't want anyone to burn out from just the impact that bearing witness has. We have to keep in mind that we're the people who actually fight for the animals. I'm guessing, is there anyone who's not vegan here? We will not hit you, don't worry. All right, so when we go to vigils, most of us are vegans, and we are the people who fight for these animals. So logically speaking, we're not even supposed to be the ones doing vigils. It's the non-vegans, because they're the ones who are spending money for them to get there. But we have to be there because no one else is going, and we're kind of forcing, let's say, indirectly through social media for all these people to see what they're doing. So what we also try is always bring non-vegan friends or vegetarian friends, family members to the vigils. In Barcelona, we had a Portuguese tourist, actually, who was walking down the street. We were doing street activism. He met us, we talked a bit, we told him we're going to a vigil tonight if you want to join. He was young and friendly and very nice, so he joined us. And by the end of the vigil, we got in the train and said, so what's going on? He said, today in the morning I woke up thinking I'm going to have a normal day, and right now I'm vegan and I'm doing activism. So it's amazing. Just because you come in contact with these animals, sometimes most people, I had never seen a pig in my life face to face until I saw one in a truck. And I can imagine this is the case with a lot of people, and it's really shocking because you realize these are not just objects. These are not like, these are really individuals. They're people, like they're animals who want to live. So it's also because when you show that you're there, you're giving, as I said, love to the animals. I know that sometimes some animals live in peace, or they actually do not get harmed when they're in the farm, but a lot of them are from industrial farms, and they've been tortured all their life. And you can see it on them sometimes. You see their bruises, you see their scars, and just giving that last compassion before they go in is really important. Another reason is because this industry completely functions in secret. It functions behind walls. A very simple example, we kill 70 billion land animals every single year, but we see none of these animals anywhere. We are 7 billion humans, and we see humans everywhere. There's 10 times more animals being killed every single day of every single year, but we don't see them anywhere. So because it works that way, it's our responsibility to put the subject on the table, put the images on the table for people to be confronted. Another reason is because when you have a personal connection with the animal, it kind of inspires you and you feel more committed to fight harder, because we're already doing a lot for the animals, but when you meet the victim that you are fighting for, you can't help but be more motivated. Like after a vigil, sometimes we go to do a cube of truth, and good luck arguing with me. Like I just saw the animals going into slaughter. How can anyone argue with us if all I can do is just take out my phone and say this animal is probably getting killed right now? You know, because I saw this animal in the morning, and people just shut up because they realize, yeah, it's true. This is happening with every single second of every single day. So the animals experience is also an important thing to share with the world. Most of the, let's say, most viral videos that we have coming from vigils is videos where you see the animal and what the animal is going through. Recently, an activist called Alex Bez was filming from a small hole into a truck, and there was a cow, not suffering or anything, but the cow had her head literally to the metal of the truck, and just looking down. And usually animals do like put their head through anything solid when they're in a lot of pain, either emotionally or physically. That video got shared millions of times just because you are sharing directly the animal's experience, and it's a non-violent video. People can't say, oh no, I can't watch this, I can't see blood or something, because it was just an animal in one truck. So it's really nice to share the animal's point of view of what they're going through. Next one. Okay, so I'm gonna talk a bit about how we do all of this. So, as I said, we use the love-based approach. We want truck drivers to know, we want slaughterhouse workers to know that we are not there against them, we are just there for the animals. So usually we have signs that say, no hate for the drivers, we're only here for the animals. And sometimes on the other side we write thank you, and on the other side we say, please give us just 3 minutes for the animals. And when the trucks see us, they stop, switch it aside so that they see the thank you part. In some groups, they prepare vegan cupcakes and vegan things, and when a truck driver stops, they just give them vegan food, so we can spend more time with the animals and just build that connection, because sometimes the slaughterhouse worker says, don't give them any animals, but then the truck driver comes and says, quick, take 2 or 3 chicken if you want. So it's really important to have that, because a lot of drivers drive for 6, 7, or 8 hours to get there, and all they want to do is just empty the animals and go back home to their families. The last thing they want is some people who just want to make their day longer, and we have to make sure that they're on our side. And this is just a picture to show how that works. In some places, actually it's odd, but in Toronto, where it all started, it's one of the most difficult places to stop trucks, when all around the world it's much easier. And we think it's because Toronto went so viral that the slaughterhouse suffered financial damage from it. Yeah, as you see, that picture is from Toronto. A lot of activists stop in front of the truck. Sometimes it gets kind of violent. Another thing that you can do is when you stop in front of the truck and the truck slows down, but they don't stop, they just start driving slowly, you can just walk backwards slowly, because you know they're not going to hurt you. They're just making the point that they're not going to stop, and you're making a point saying, all right, you're not going to stop, I'm not going to move away, I'm just going to walk with you slowly. And while you're walking slowly, other activists can get footage of things. So this is an example of street activism that you can do with your SAVE movement group. These are all animals, for example, that, the pictures are taken during the visuals that took place in the city. We also go down the street with 3D goggles. Has anyone used can you raise your hand if you've ever used the virtual reality headsets, the 3D glasses? They're very powerful, right? Yeah. So what we do is sometimes we go down the street, we have a table, and people stop and we ask them, do you want to try it out? And basically, you put these virtual reality headsets and you are basically an animal in the slaughterhouse. And as you move, everything moves with you. It's really realistic, and a lot of people just take it off and they say they can't take it anymore, and they start asking questions about veganism. So keep in mind, climate vegan is very important, because sometimes what we also do is when we have some funding and we're gonna screen a documentary in university, let's say, we say documentary screening, anyone who joins gets, let's say, either free popcorn or just €2, let's say, or anything like that, because sometimes people know that it's gonna be something else, but if you say, hey, you get free food or you get some money for that, well, they have no other choice but to go in. And we did this in Barcelona once. It wasn't with our SAVE Movement group, but what we did, it was Halloween night, and we asked permission to screen Earthlings in the cinema, and we made a whole event page and everything of a Halloween night horror movie. Whoever comes first, first 50 attendants get free popcorn, and people showed up thinking they're gonna watch a real horror movie, but we just played Earthlings instead. And it was interesting to see their reaction going in, thinking they're gonna have some fun. And then at the end, it was just a big session of discussion about veganism. All right, so to participate, whenever you want to start a group, usually the best thing is to get in touch with someone you know from the SAVE movement. And what you do is you just reach out, you give your information, where you live, and then we start, let's say, a Facebook chat group, and we start sharing all the not documentation, but information and tips that anyone who wants to start a group would use. We ask, let's say, if you have the map or can look for the map of your country with all the slaughterhouses. For example, for Poland, David has found that map with all the slaughterhouses per animal and with addresses and everything. So all you have to do is choose the slaughterhouse you want to go to. You go one day, you check what time the trucks arrive, or you can just call. What I do in Barcelona is I just call and I say, I'm a student of animal agriculture, I'm doing a project about slaughterhouses, and I want to know what time trucks arrive in general in that area, and they just tell me, and then 4 weeks later we go do a vigil, and they'll never remember that someone called asking for the hour. It's a good way, and make sure if you do that, you don't call and then go the same day, because then they're gonna go oh, they tricked us, and they get angry with you, and they're not gonna let the truck stop. So always keep a big period of time between both. So next one. All right. Yes, I'm done. Thank you.